Hello and welcome to the podcast where we explore behind the stories of the audio plays and audio dramas and actual plays that people are creating, because I'm trying to understand everything there is to know about what makes audio narrative stories work. And I'm delighted to have Hem back. Hem, in case anyone doesn't know who you are and what you do, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Hem. I'm often known in the actual play world as Volonda, or V. I am lead producer at Blighthouse Studio. We basically create escapist stories, and we do that through audio dramas, and we do that through actual plays. And I am often, if not always, the forever GM or keeper of the various actual plays that we have.
I feel that.
Yeah.
The brief moments where I get to actually play are delightful, and
Yes.
I've been able to do that a few times lately. And obviously, you've also been delightful, and you've joined our The Anything Can Happen part as well.
Yeah,
so
that was so fun. I got to betray people. It was awesome.
Exactly. Betrayal, it's part of the whole process why I love those dilemmas so much. So, I mean, the reason we've got you coming back is obviously you've done... You've moved forward with Blighthouse, and you're now doing a lot more stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know a little bit more about what it's been for you to start working more in that kind of process, that kind of like professionalism publishing style process. And also, I know you've worked with like us, Fable Folly, and you've been getting more and more engaged with that. But I know what's most interesting is that you got new series coming out, and I'd like to know a little bit more about that. So where should we start? Should we start with a little bit about Blighthouse?
Let's start broad.
Yeah.
So about this time last year, if not a couple of months before, I quit my previous job and I decided I was going to do this full time. They paid me incredibly well. They are lovely people, and I really hope they do incredibly. I just got that itch. I got that itch of like, I haven't played in like a year. I haven't created in about a year. I'm just I'm coasting. I don't want to do that. So I decided, fuck it, let's do this full time and let's just see what we can do with it. And you know, I mixed around some other summer life events that pop up that you can't avoid. I knew I was going to have a lot of time. So like, yeah, I did this full time. So now we have episodes on our existing actual plays, essentially almost up to date until the end of the year. I've been able to like spend time and update all of our websites, so all the SEO is working well, and making sure that all of our YouTube is also SEO good, because that's where like sadly podcasting is going to. We've been able to create new shows, and I've actually been able to put effort into like script reading those, editing those, helping to mentor the guy who's like writing one of our newer shows. It's enabled me to be like, okay, I can sit down and write this as a module that other people could play, although it's not in a playable state yet, but it is things that I've been able to have time to do. And we've also been able to finish recording our pilot show, our biggest show, our longest standing show, The Lucky Die. The finale of that is recorded. That's a 9-year campaign, 10 years by the time it finishes airing. So yeah, it's been intense, and I've had to learn a lot about the whole process on like, okay, audio dramas, I've never really done that from the beginning, but now I'm helping to mentor someone through it, because the process is fairly similar to actual plays, but it's actually different in other areas. And
well, there's the writing aspect to it, which are the kind of story goals. And I think one of the things I've learned in these interviews that I've been able to do is thinking about the audio space in a much more detail. When with an actual play, I haven't felt the need to worry so much about that. When I observe people doing audio drama, I've noticed that they actually got to be better at the visual story. So the audio, you know what I'm saying? You got to paint the picture with sound.
Yeah, like,
does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, we have moved away from narration, right?
Yeah.
So previously, when we've watched stuff like the good old days or in books and stuff, like someone would narrate, like, and I was standing there in a room that was filled with smoke, and you could feel the atmosphere of the wood burning in the stove. You can't do that when you don't have narration, and a lot of audio dramas don't have narration anymore. It's not the style that people like listening to, and so therefore you have to put in the sounds of the crackling fire. You have to figure out, okay, is the window open or closed? Does that make a wind? Are you going to go to the effort of putting footsteps into this, or do you or don't you? Are you going to have ambience hanging around in the background, or are you just going to go completely on dialogue and hope for the best? Like, these are all things to consider, right?
Even if you do stick with a first-person voice, you know, in some form, you still need those elements to reinforce and to sort of magnify the impact. Otherwise, you don't get the same suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, because that's kind of what you're really going for if you're listening, right? Because often you're doing other stuff, but you want to be able to think, oh, I'm listening to this thing happening. Like, you don't want to insert creaky door number 1 sound effect. You don't want the Wilhelm scream, but you also don't want a complete lack of
but we
sound.
do. We do want the Wilhelm scream.
I know. It's just such a classic when you hear it. You're like, I do this. But if you're into like audio or sound stuff like we are, like you spot that and you're like, there's always that little bit of disconnect. But if you want to build immersion, like how far are you willing to go? What do you think actually are you needed? And are you willing to break the bank or break yourself trying to get 100% authenticity? And is 100% authenticity actually worth it? So, for example, there's an incredible book by Casey Wayland. It's called Bombs Always Beep. And it is like how to do like sound effects. And the point is that bombs don't beep in the real world. They just blow up. But you can't, if you're doing an audio space, you can't just have a picture of a bomb and someone go, oh my God, it's a bomb. We have to hear like the beeping noise. We have to know that because we've associated that, right? So we need that. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting theory, but in actual play worlds, if you, depending on your level of editing, you don't necessarily need those. And it is often a relief not to have to sit down and go, all right, I'm going to need 50 sound effects. I have to source them. Neil has to mix and edit them in the right place. I have to tell them how long it needs to be there. And the list becomes endless, right? And you can bypass a lot of that because actual play audio dramas, they're similar, but they're definitely not the same.
No, totally. And I think that you're right about the bombs always beep. There's so many different samples like that. Which I don't know the list. It's not on my bag, but I remember talking to people in games about why we end up using certain types of sounds. Like the classic one is the schnicked as you draw a sword. Yeah. They're made of she's made of leather. They don't make a schnicked sound. But if you don't have the schnicked, it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, it's the same as like, because you can always tell, right? My favorite thing is the idea of the shotgun, right? You can tell how good a game is by its shotgun physics. Does the body move backwards? Is the sound at least sounding right? And if those things are wrong, it just doesn't feel right. So even though they may not make the absolutely perfect noise, you have to have it. You have to have it. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah, it's when people put when they're doing the break.
The breaking one. Yeah,
dial shotguns. I'm joking. I'm sure no one does that. Really?
Yeah, sure, no one's
ever. Yeah, unless it's for fun. But yeah, so what fundamentally to get to the bottom of the kind of principle. So you've got this massive learning curve going on, but I think this interesting for me is the shift in responsibility from being a performer, being a coordinator, doing the community management processing that you've done, to now you've got and to a certain extent, I think you did some of this anyway, but the success of the project depends on a commercial mindset in the sense of, I'm not saying full on like, strange guy in a top hat with curly moustache writing books about how to make money out of games. I mean more like you have a budget, you've got to allocate it, you've got to make sure that where you can pay people that they're paid for their work appropriately, that, the people understand what is the expectation of what they're working on. And obviously we don't want to have people volunteer. I'm sure there'll be some things that people do volunteer over. We want to show respect for the thing. Now, in my case, I have no money. I'm doing a actual play for fun and to have a creative side. But I have a mind, if it ever were to explode, and very, very unlikely, probably more chance of a Walk surviving a supernova, to coin a phrase, but I've established principles early on to say this is how I would deal with that if that were to occur. That to me is about being responsible. But you're putting your own money in, you've got, costs, you've got processes, you've got production, you've got timelines. How does that change the way you look at the process?
So we were stupid when we first started the Lucky Die, and that's like 10 years ago. This was back in like almost the Wild West days of actual plays. It hadn't really been properly established as like a really good thing to do yet. It's been taking off on Twitch, but it wasn't really an audio drama thing yet. It wasn't really a podcast thing. We never really had a proper conversation about, hey, if this blows up, what are we going to do here? Because the assumption is that, of course, like everybody's putting in 25% of the work. Everybody is going to therefore get 25% of the pie because there are only 4 of us at the time. time changes. And when you start a project, you have big ideals, especially if nobody signs anything, nobody says anything, there's not a lot of work to do or whatever. It ended up being that the project, like everybody turns up for recordings, everybody puts that over, like that's where everybody's even. But beyond that, like production wise, marketing wise, over time, that shifted from a 4-person team to a 2-person team. To where like one of them really couldn't put in a lot of time. One of them ended up starting it and then just realized it just wasn't for them, but there was a lack of communication in some places. And it ended up becoming a 2-person job. And that's when we put our foot down, was like, hey, if things go further, we can't have it like this. And we were still stupid because we never wrote any of that shit down and we never really enforced it. We're like, let's try and take this more seriously. Again, things didn't move until we set up Blighthouse, and we just had that frank conversation of like, hey, TLD is now a 5-person show. We want to do Blighthouse when we're Kessa on board, and like other folks we work with want to start making proper stories and make this a more serious artistic endeavor than we currently have. How do you feel about us taking over X, Y, and Z? And this is how we intend to do it. And the only response we got back was, we just want to be involved. Just don't cut us out. I'm like, that's incredible. So now I have all this. It's great because like, they're honest about their commitment levels. We're honest about ours. But this is a conversation we should have had early, thinking out these principles. And when we got together to do Blighthouse, bringing in other folks to work with us who also were a part of TLD at the time, of just like, hey, we are first and foremost art. Art is what we are doing. We aren't making content. We're telling stories. We're making art. Even our craptastic non-fiction show. Even that is technically art first, but that's just us goofing off. We don't really take that seriously.
No, but I think it's completely valid. I mean, it's a completely valid way to look at it.
That's our top tier thing, and then beyond that, it is like, okay, like Neil and I, who edits and does all the music for TLD and is a player. For the longest time, we've had this massive spreadsheet of just like, okay, this is an episode. This is the status the episode is. Is there any voice acting? Who do we need to thank from Patreon? What ad spots are we going to be doing this week? Have I recorded the intro? Who is doing the outro? Has it been recorded? What date is it supposed to be releasing? And it wasn't until like 3 or 4 years ago that we actually had a release schedule. We were just trying to get it once a week. And then it was like, I can't do once a week. This is ridiculous. And then we managed to like move things around. I got a job where I could pay him, some of my wages. So now he does part-time for us, like specifically paid, which he was never able to do before. So now we have a schedule. It has to come out on these dates because Patreon are expecting this, and we have to record this by this date. And I have to make sure that, Kessa's show Counterbalance has the editor paid once every 6 months, which is what Blighthouse is committed to do, because Kessa's editing is very different to an actual play and is much more expensive and way more dedicated, because there's a lot more going in on the editing side of like sound
100%.
Effects and music and getting everybody's mics. It's a whole different style of editing compared to actual plays. And then figuring out, okay, well, we have patrons, we have to do extra things, so I have to make sure that they are scheduled. And a lot of it is like cat wrangling. And then like, oh, okay, so we're going to pay the actors. How much are we going to pay them if we have voice actors? And the answer is, I'd love to pay you a shit ton of money, but I can't. So like, how do I rough that out? Is that like payment per page? Is this going to be payment per line? What happens when you have an actor who is 99% of the show? Can I even afford to pay them like the $1,000? The answer is probably not. And a lot of folks who work with us like understand we're an indie project. We will try and pay what we can when we can, because even though we are partly paid by Patreon, we're partly paid by the ads that we get from Fable and Folly doing that work from us, partly paid by merch and music sales, and I'll get into that in a minute. We still can't cover all of it. Stuff this still comes out the savings that we originally had, so like we still have to fork out money and figure out what can go and where. And I now, for the last 2 years since I started like making this a little bit more serious and realizing I was going to make it more serious, I now have a massive like financial spreadsheet of just like, this is the stuff coming in from here, this is the money going out, this is sadly how much we spent on this last year and how much we didn't make as well. Also tracking the amount of episodes and bonus episodes and listens or views on YouTube, just like collating all this data in this one big tracker sheet. It's just like, I never wanted my hobby back 10 years ago to be a spreadsheet of finances and view tracking, and also have a separate spreadsheet of every episode from every show has a release date. Do we have everything need? Is everything written up? Do I have all the thumbnails? Do I have all the episode infos there? Do I have a description? Am I even bothering with IMDb on this? Yes, so that means once a month I have maintenance day where I have to look at IMDb and add every goddamn episode that's come out, plus all of everything that goes with it. It's like, there's a lot more that I was trying to balance when I wasn't doing this full time that I'm like, like, oh God, now I have time to do this. And it's really scary because I realized I hadn't been doing it properly. I hadn't put the full amount of effort into it. And now I'm just like, I have to SEO everything just to get everything seen and figure out who I'm networking with. And are they worth talking to? And is it worth switching, networks to get essentially $50 more? How do I make money out of the assets we already have available? Yeah, it's a lot.
Well, and then again, I can attest it because you have been very generous and showed me some of the kind of processes that you do and help me. I mean, I'm still to do it because I'm, finding my professional. Whilst you're here, don't forget to check out our actual play, The Anything Could Happen show on YouTube and all good podcast sites, where I put my guest players through no-win scenarios with limited information and always against the clock. And of course, where anything could happen.
It is worth noting that there are dozens of reasons a planet could be declared uninhabitable. It's not just air composition. There could be contaminants in the soil, in the water. There could be any number of reasons that a colony like this would be abandoned. And sometimes the reason that data is kept under lock and key is to make sure that people like us don't disturb what is lurking underneath, which is, of course, my job here. I just do want to call our attention to that to make sure that, if we need to cut and go in a dangerous situation, that we are, following procedures and making sure that we're not releasing anything from this colony potentially out into other spaces and colonies in the area.
That's fair. Thank you, Neil.
Fair enough.
I want to go back to something you said earlier, because I think it resonates with me really deeply. So, one of the things you talked about is the level of risk that people are willing to take, the amount of commitment people are willing to give. That's a fundamental. And I think if there's a genuine advice that should be coming out to anyone or any creative endeavor, whether you're video game making, whether you're tabletop game making, whether you're making a podcast, whether you're making an action play, whatever it might be, the participants need to be honest with each other and themselves. And it's very easy to say you want to do this thing because it's fun. It's great. Yep. But I think if people aren't clear, and it's okay to have different needs, it's okay to have different commitments. But if you're not clear with your fellow participants, I like to think of the company as a group of people on a common endeavor. But if you're not clear what you're actually signing up for, and you're going to end up causing problems. And that's where I think it doesn't just cause professional problems. It can deeply and profoundly affect human relationships. So it can cause a huge amount of damage.
Yeah, it really does. For example, we started out as hobbyists, right? We were just a group of friends after a podcast that fell apart that we weren't running, fell apart, and we were like, let's just do something. That level of getting swept away in those early days of we could do this and we could do that and we can do this. I can commit to that. And it's we were young and stupid. It's just up like this. No one would have thought we'd gotten this far. Yeah. But it's really hard when you're swept up in the moment to be honest with what you can actually do or what you're willing to commit to, because what you want to do versus what you're able to do are very different. And unfortunately, that only really comes with time. I can now look at a project and go hey, this project that you want to do, you want to hire someone for 40 hours a week to do a very similar job to one I did before. I don't have the time for that. I don't want to do that. But I can give you a few hours a week or maybe a few hours a month. Yeah. If you can make that work, I can make that work. Even though the project or the idea of talking to people was this is incredible. I really want to do this. This sounds like fun. I could definitely help. But I don't think I actually really want to. I know I could. And the idea is great. But I kind of don't want to. I have a different focus. And it's definitely much better to be honest about those things, even if ultimately the project doesn't go ahead, because it can really affect your friendships. And it really did for TLD for a little while. There was a lot of resentment sitting on a lot of sides. Yeah. And, we cleared that up, but that, maturity and age is going to happen over 10 years, right? So, we kind of wish that was more honest up front. And I'm very blessed that the show that we just recorded, three of us are producers on it. And I had completely forgotten to ask the other player if he wanted to even do anything else. So we were in the kitchen making dinner. I was like, hey, I never asked, do you want to be involved more than just being a player? And he put the knife down and looked at me and went, no. My man, I love you so much for being honest, because it's really easy to get caught up in the moment, right? But I was very glad we had that honest conversation. And people are sometimes willing to put time in for free. And, we have to sustain ourselves on a lot of that kind of good grace because indie. But I will also freely give my time to other people and no cost. You want me to record 4 pages? Sure, I'll do it. I don't give a crap. 20 page? Maybe we'll talk. But if it's cool, I'll do it anyway. There's a lot of love that goes around to make art projects. And
Yeah.
you just have to,
No,
again, be
exactly.
upfront and honest about it.
But that's the thing, is that what is it you're trying to achieve? I mean, if we're trying to make, I don't know, a top 10 podcast which has got huge amounts of audience, it is disrespectful to expect that to be done for free.
Yeah,
But if you're
and the
talking about an indie
mindsets.
art project,
Yeah, it's very different. Like, so if you are intending to create art, your mindset is very different to how if you're creating content or if you're trying to meet a certain goal, right? So we have tried to in our new show, because we're taking a lot of risks. We called it the Great Experiment for the longest time, because like everything is an experiment. There's a bunch of stuff we haven't done before and we're trying it out, right? And like a part of that is like we've decided to treat this section, this one particular show, more like we would do if we were producing it as a show that is supposed to make a lot of money, supposed to get a lot of views on it. And that mindset change is very different. Like, I'm no longer thinking, oh, okay, so I need to, like, from my heart, I think the episode should be called this. But I know that clickbait works better on YouTube, so I need to be more mindful of capital letters and full stops and like what keywords am I using and SEO and stuff, and like what colors work. I have on my right-hand side like an ideas board that I have grabbed from YouTube of thumbnails. So I'm just making a bunch of thumbnails that apply to the rules that I am seeing. Is like, what colors are they using? Are they using like one picture? The answer is no. If you want to do thumbnails on YouTube, and in fact for anything else, it has to be a composite of pictures, words, and multiple photos. Like, there's no other choice. Like, nothing else gets seen. And it's the way you view it has to be way more mechanical. If you're trying to be top 10, you have to look at what's the top trending thing. You have to like figure out, okay, like what is in the zeitgeist next week. And that's a really difficult thing to do. And it's really difficult to try and apply that to anything fiction, because we don't have the luxury of turning something around in a week. It is often not the case. It usually takes us months, if not longer, to get an episode out of something fiction. We can't trend the same way that other people do, and we don't often have the same community behind us or people who already know us to get that to that level. A lot of success.
It's a different scale.
I mean, that's something I'm actually on a consulting with at the moment, is getting a small business to a medium business, and the mindset has to be completely different. You have to stop going from these are vibe based or feelings based ideas to data led, and that's kind of what we've had to do and like figure out. Okay, the data says we need to put these words in, and we have to market like this, and I have to talk to these people to get this sort of thing out there. Just what you got to do. It's just a different mindset, and it's made it interesting, and I've definitely learned from it, but I'm not sure I ever want to produce a podcast like this again.
But that's the challenge, isn't it? Because what there is, like I say, it's a different beast when you're dealing with something that is of a professional, quote unquote, standard, whatever that means, as opposed to doing something, like you say, for the vibes. And I like the fact that I'm doing, a piece of playing with people, playing a fun thing with people that I happen to put out. I'm sure I'd like there to be an audience for that, but that's not the point of it. The point of it is I want to feel creative. Now, when you're putting something that's got more effort, more cost, more engagement, more professionalism to it, that great quality content requires great responsible. I'm sure there's a butchered analogy I can put there. You get my drift. It's like, of course you need more. The more you put in, the more you have to put in.
Yep. So, the more time that we have to you put in, because that's the freest thing we have, right? Apart from the fact we have to balance that against paying jobs. Time is the only thing I can put in for free, but even that isn't going to be infinite because we have a deadline. We have a deadline when things are actually coming out. And, we also have to look at, so if we're paying an editor X amount per month, and his is currently the only overhead we have, everything else is paid for, like, how do I even get that bare minimum? And it's like, okay, I need sponsorships. Because I know from looking at numbers, like our flagship shows, they aren't small, but they're small, and they don't make enough to pay the editor. I mean, you probably need nearly a year and a half to be able to pay the editor for 2 months. Like, that's an insane amount, and it's not a small show.
It's not sustainable.
It's not. And the only way to do that is to, okay, well, if we are doing YouTube now, and that's a thing that we have to do, And because that's how you get views, that's how you get like sponsorships. What are they doing? They're getting sponsorships from people, whether you like it or not. Like, okay, we have to figure out where to get sponsorships from. Like, who the hell do we talk to about this crazy game set in this crazy place that nobody else has ever played before? It's not established IP. It's not this, that, or the other. It's a bunch of four weirdos sitting in a room recording, pretending to be not zombie bait. Like, how do you monetize that? How do you get sponsors for that? So it's like, okay, well, we could look at our local market. I mean, it's set in Iceland. Maybe we could get some Icelandic companies. And then you have the joy of, okay, I know how to get sponsors for English-speaking podcasts in like set everywhere else and in Fantasyland. How do I get Icelandic sponsors? Can I just email them? No. Apart from the fact I don't speak Icelandic, so I got Athel to do it. Great, he sent that out. No, in Iceland replies to emails. You have to call them or physically go there. That's how business is done in the market that we're looking at. And it wasn't until I really started talking to that and figuring out all my experiences with Quest Portal and whatnot, who are Iceland based, like, no, yeah, everything Iceland, like the market is different. So I have to treat the people we're trying to get sponsorship for differently compared to how I would do everything else. And like, if that applies in Iceland, are there other things that I should be picking up about the market and getting sponsorship that I'm not aware of? Probably.
Oh, absolutely. And like you say, this is the fascinating kind of principle, isn't it? Because you're essentially talking about kind of localization, which is something that in games is a kind of like known thing that we have to do. But we usually come at it from the point of view, a game is a global experience, mostly. Not always, but mostly. Yeah, the idea of a local market for a game, why would you do that? But of course, with audio drama, we're talking about, I'm assuming mostly you're doing this in English.
Oh, yeah, because I can't speak Icelandic, right?
No. Are you dubbing it? How is an Icelandic?
Absolutely never going to be able to dub this to Icelandic. Icelandic is a notoriously difficult language to learn, right? Different pronunciations. There's like 16 ways of saying horse, depending on the context of what is being done to, by, or for the horse, or from the horse. Like, it's a whole different thing. And I can barely pronounce this stuff, but we have two Icelanders at the table. With the general rule being, like, if you're having a conversation, yes, we have to assume it's in Icelandic if you're talking to Icelandic people. But if I have to understand it as the GM, it has to be in English. So that was a conceit that we had. Like, there was just this thing that, this is what English is going to be, but there is still Icelandic smattered throughout. And I have a little thing on our website, because I had to learn how to build a website again from kind of almost scratch, of just like, okay, we have a page. It's just called Icelandic at our table. And I went through and I wrote down everything I thought it was, like 50 entries, a bunch of places, fantastic. Listening through, halfway through, I've got another list of 50 things that these goddamn Icelanders say that we have to have translated and put on the website for pronunciation purposes. Like, you bastards.
But that's kind of the joy, isn't it, as well? I'm going to step back a little bit again, because I think you've also made a point a couple of times about YouTube. And so we're talking about, this transition of podcasts where a YouTube actually, I don't think it's necessarily just YouTube. I think a video component to an audio podcast has become pretty normal. Now, I've been doing that throughout, because I happen to like
foresight,
the fact that you can see people, and particularly people's facial reactions when they're doing a conversation. And I happen to like the dialogue that people do, which is why, as a referee, I try to say almost nothing. Although I've been kind of made to recently. I've been made to play the computer.
Good.
But I have the view that I should only be responding in world. I still like to do the sending all of the exposition stuff I'm trying to do through background and Discord chat, stuff like that. But that's the conceit that I chose for my experience, and that means it works as an audible experience, and it works as a visual experience to an extent. I mean, you can decide if it works or not. But the point about the audio drama, where you're creating these audible effects, is that you're painting the picture with sound. Now you're taking that very same thing and you're putting it into a visual context. How the hell are you going to do that without putting in the visual things? And now we've got television budgets to think about.
Yeah. So
I'm not serious, but yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. So, for example, if we were going to make a video component for Counterbalance, is our releasing, our releasing high fantasy audio drama. Right? The whole thing is scripted. Esther and Sarah Buczynski have spent so much time, effort, and love making it sound like you are in the world. And the idea of making those videos to go alongside that, you could go one for one as a screen, but then you're basically making an anime. and you aren't making a podcast. It's not an audio first experience, which kind of defeats the point of, well, I mean, you probably still would want some of these audio effects, but it's not a 1-for-1, right? You can tell a lot with a picture, slightly less with audio. You have to be very clever how you do audio. But the idea of doing that is a budget that nobody has, and we certainly don't have it in the indie world. Like, we can barely afford to edit an episode of just audio. How the fuck are we going to do video? So, like, you know, if video becomes a thing that has to happen so that you can get a bigger audience, you either have to accept you probably don't have a bigger audience and accept that's just a parameter. Like, you just have to, like, oh, this is one thing we can't change, so we're going to have to try and find other ways of getting more people to listen and thusly engage. Or you have to create something like one of those cheap and tacky headliner things of just like, here is an image, here is the waveform, and here's the text on the screen. I mean, it does the same job, right? I mean, it's kind of giving you the visuals of things moving on the screen, but then what do you put on the screen? Is it just going to be one image? Does that work? Does it have to be a moving image? Well, probably, because, you know, unfortunately, if you look at how things are trending, we have like 5,000 things on the screen. Everything is moving at different rates. That's just because that's what the attention span needs. Do you do that?
Totally.
I don't know. You have to, if you are going to do something with video, you kind of have to think they are two separate products, but you have to work with them at the same time when you're creating a project. We're lucky in the actual play world in that we can do it at the same time, because like when people are watching actual plays or watching the players perform, they don't need the sound effects, they don't need the music, they don't need anything more than to see the players go, you what? Like, they don't need anything more than that. But if you are trying to do something else, you have to think about that as you go along. Actual plays, we're blessed. We also have a fantastic musician who is doing all the music and putting that in afterwards. But how you edit a visual actual play versus a for audio only actual play, we are learning there are some big differences. No,
totally get it. And I think it's a fascinating kind of problem to kind of get your head around as well, because I'll give you an example. The number of TikToks that we see where they've taken the audio from one thing and then they've got some random nonsense video. And you know that someone's stolen I mean, I'm being a bit provocative, but someone's effectively stolen someone else's work and thrown it together to add it onto their playlist so they get the audience. And that's just not nice.
We're seeing a lot of great, like, essentially recycled content, right?
Yeah,
it is
recycled content.
You see a lot of like taking the scene from a TV show and sticking a different soundtrack on it so they can get by like whatever it is, and flipping the image backs so that they can get a bunch of views for something that is definitely not their work, right? And that's just
exactly.
I admit it. I put on the old lady hat of our 4 Top 3s group, and I'm like, I can't stand short form content. I just can't. It all looks the same to me eventually, and it's usually really cheap effort. And if it's not, it's probably some advertising. Exactly what I have to do right now, which is infuriating. Become the thing I hate, Oscar. Become the thing I hate. But it's how you play the game.
It is. I mean, I don't hate short form content. I mean, in terms of video game stuff, what I'm doing is 40 to 60 second lessons on how to run live ops games. And, you know, not a huge amount of audience, but I'm getting just under 1,000 views for a typical one. That's not terrible.
No, it's pretty good.
The point is that I've decided to do a format which allows me to talk about one particular thing that's relevant to somebody who is actually serious about professional game development. And I hope that that's a useful thing. Now, I'm trying to apply that same logic to the way that I'm thinking about shorts for this. But I have no illusions that's going to turn into a big scale. I'm not going to become a big TikTok star for the fact that I've got things. But if I can set up a scene where, let's say, if we've just started doing this, but anything can happen, where I'm going to have a short synopsis of the plot, you know, one of you has to die for the rest of you to live, and then cut to some things that the actual players said in the process. Now, if we can make that more interesting than it was, because at the moment we've just got snippets of people that they said, no context. That's not done anything. It's not done any use. But if I can set the scene up and make it interesting and leave it hanging, I'm hoping that gives you a reason to want to watch the episode. The trouble is that that's not content making. That's not content short form. That's an ad for an episode, and no one's going to care.
Nope. They have to be like, you have to be very good at this. So like short form content, if you're using it for advertising purposes, and we have definitely seen a lot of actual plays out there who have done incredibly well at this. I think it's Tales from the Stinky Tavern or Dragon or something. And the other one is Tale of Avernus, but they have a lot of comedy going for them. And if you're doing heavy drama, you can't put short form heavy drama as an ad because it doesn't work. People don't want to watch that. There's so much context that comes around that. So if your show is a little bit more serious, like we have for like The Lucky Die or even for The Sprouting, it's really hard to pick up funny moments because those come from a lot of established lore in the background, and most of our stuff is fairly serious. Like, you can't clip 30 seconds and not have some like background context to it. Even in our early episodes, there's a lot going on, but we have a very different game going on with what we just recorded, and it's much more easy to go, here's a minute, I can cut it into like 40 seconds and the whole thing is funny. That's what gets people attention. It's funny. And that's a lot of actual plays are funny. Like, this is what a lot of people listen to. There are very few where they're just like, this is a serious storytelling thing and there's humor in it. It's more, this is funny, and occasionally there's serious in it. So if you're on the other side of the scale, like most of my projects are, it's really hard to find those funny moments and put them out there because it's also not what you're ending up getting. You have to play like the short form game very carefully if you're running it as an ad. I believe Avernus and Stinky Dragon have animations going on, which for the rest of us we can't afford, but then they earned that. They went out there, they did the short form content, they cut it into what it should be, they did the marketing, right place, right time. Everything worked out well, but it cost a lot of work. It was not overnight. And unfortunately, anyone who comes up overnight is not coming up overnight. There's like years of dedication in the background, and that's how often it is. And we are very much in that grinding until we get to the right place, learning everything we have from everyone around us kind of phrase. It's just difficult.
But it takes me back to what you said earlier on. The reason your primary driver is the creation of art. And I think that if you can have that primary driver and survive long enough to keep making it, that equals success.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, you have to set your own success metric, right? And when we did a break partway through TLD, where we were like, all right, when I need to take a break because you've gotten to the plot I've gone so far, and I'd never expected us to even get this far. So let's take a 3-month break. And I sat down with everyone. I did like a player catch up, how things are going, how they're not going, what with their character and whatnot. And one of the things is like, what do you consider a success metric? Because there are some that are smart, right? And there are some that feel like they're good goals, right? I want to have 1 million downloads. Well, I'm sorry to say, but if you leave your podcast running long enough, you're going to get 1 million downloads. It might take you 1 million years, but you'll get there. So it's an okay metric. Like, do you mean within a certain time frame? Is there a reason you want this? And I was really proud that most of my players came up with stuff like, hey, I just want my character to have a genuinely good ending. I want this to be something that people talk about. Great. I want to see cosplay of my characters, and it happened. And I was like, great, we've made it. We've done it. Like, we have done what we've set out to do, right? And like, having success metrics in the creation based solely on the creation itself is such a good thing to work towards. And it really helps keeps the fire burning if that is your true like North Star metric. If that is what it is, you will keep making until the end. But if your metric is something like, I want 10,000 followers in 1 hour, buddy, you might want to take a seat and a really strong drink. Stop
drinking. I think it's probably more appropriate.
Yeah, like, it is like, and when we're talking about like, taking this more seriously and being a business, like one of the things I heard like a very long time ago, if you are trying to be self-employed, you are basically having 2 jobs at the same time for the first 3 or 4 years, unless you're very lucky or you're serving a very particular niche that is really needed. So yeah, like you have to work hard at it like it's a job until it is able to be a job. And there is a cutoff point, and there will always be the standing on the looking over their ledge of like, my paying job is right behind me, but I know I have to take that jump off of the edge of the cliff to hope that paycheck is on the other side. There will always be that moment when you think, shall I or shan't I? I mean, sometimes you'll look at it and go, the ad revenue is like 50,000 a month. God damn, okay, what am I doing this other job for? Of course, that's obvious, but that's not the truth for most people.
No, it's not the truth. And I actually think it's a little bit like how I describe why I work in the video games industry. It's because you cut me, I bleed game. I have to. I don't have a choice. I have to be involved with making games. So I don't happen to care if it's a tabletop game or if it's a video game or whatever else. In fact, the more of a mix of that, the better, the more happy I am.
What is it? When God looks at you and he has to decide whether you're a businessman or a gamer, God, I hope it's the
Yes, exactly that. But I think, this is really the crux of it, which is the commitment is non-trivial. It has to be your vocation to do that. I think there are, I'm sure there must have been people or individuals who did get lucky or did do very well. But we've often listened to those survivor stories at our peril. And there's so many so many kind of like people have passed along the wayside because they thought those survivor stories were fact, whereas they're always, it's the classic thing. Everyone thinks the path is like this, when actually it's like this.
Yep. It's like all those unknown connections that get you to where you are, those weird unknown paths. Like, the day you decided, actually, I'm not going to go to university because I'm basically not allowed to right now. I have too much going on and I have to get a job and I need to stay at home with my parents. If I had gone, actually, screw that, I'm going to go to university no matter what, my path would be very different. This is a change in my past that I don't know how it got to where it is, but it's a reason why I got to where it is. And it's really hard to stand on that little end, like, I made it, and have someone else look up at the hill and go, God damn, that looks super easy. There's a straight line up there. I'm like, nobody. I
just realized as well, of course, I did the classic audio dilemma where, whilst this is supposed to be a video and audio based thing, I said this and then this without actually describing the crazy hyper weird line I was drawing with my hand. But I'm hoping that anyone listening only to this will appreciate that I owned up to my mistake there. Anyway, we've been teasing this long enough. We need to talk about your new, your exciting, this incredible project that you're working on. Tell us a little bit more about that and how it came about.
So Neil and I have been talking for a long time about, like, what do we do next? Like, what's the next project after TLD? Because we have Sprouting going on, but like it's kind of not the same. We were talking about how are we going to do something else? How are we even record season 2 at TLD? Like, because, schedules and whatnot has become worse over 10 years. Like, how are we going to make this work? What are we going to do? How do we make ourselves bigger so we're functionally able to pay Neil out of what we actually make and not out of, like, savings? We just talked about the fact it's probably going to have to be a visual thing. That is where everybody getting the views. It's something we've not tried before. Like, maybe we could make this work. And then we just had that on the back burner, in the back of the mind. And then I looked up one day and went, I think I want to run a zombie RPG. Yeah, I've got an idea. She lied. And we sat down, we talked about the kind of project we wanted to do. It's like, okay, well, if we need visual, we can just record it the way that Twitch streamers do, but it doesn't have the same energy or the same feel. We know that we want the Sprouting crew to come back one day. We want the TLD crew to come back one day to actually record in person, because those sessions are electric compared to everything else. It's just, there's always something about it. And for that, we need to build a better setup. We currently had everybody in the living room with some blankets up on the wall, and it was okay. We need to build a better setup. So we need a better studio. We need better cameras, because we're going to have cameras if that's what we're going to do. So we had to build a studio. Like, if we're going to do that, we have to justify it with a project. What are we going to do? We're going to bring TLD over? Probably not. I don't have a story, and things are really wild and very expensive to fly 3 people out from the States. So how about we don't do that? Okay, so then let's start a different project. Let's start a whole new project where the whole thing is an experiment. Everything from advertising down to videos, down to how I even GM, down to the equipment we have, the room, and the cast. Like, let's just go whole hog and make this whole thing an experiment. So we spoke about it, the 3 of us, me, Aethel, and Neil. Aethel was our video editor, player, and also my husband, and we're part of TLD and all the other stuff we do. So it's like, okay, well, we need a 4th player then if it's going to be Neil and Aethel. Okay, well, I can't really afford to fly anyone else out. We can barely afford to fly Neil out, and he's the audio guy. Like, that's a justification on its own. What do we do? And we were sitting there just like, and I just looked up at Aethel and went, we should just call our friend Dagger. And he was like, what? We should just call him. Just invite, see if he's up for it. Oh, we know we're asking for like a week of time, and I know that this is impossible, but maybe he'll say yes. He picked up the phone, and like 3 sentences in Icelandic later, he got, yes, when? So he came over. We set all this stuff up. We knew what the story was going to be. I had no idea, or I knew vaguely what the story was going to be. I knew that we need a system that worked for the game we were going to tell. So I chose basic role-playing, because everything hashes out on D&D and needs to be reality-based, and BRP, basic role-playing from Chaos Room, tends to be slightly better for that kind of stuff. It doesn't have infection rules for zombies, but no other system has a really good zombie infection system. There's nothing out there that's really good. So I stole the mechanic from Betrayal at House on the Hill, because I have an incredible haunting roll, which is the number goes down every time that you roll, and then if you fail it, then the haunt happens, and that's going to happen to my players. Fail the roll, that number goes down every time they get bitten or infected or something, bitten or scratched. Yeah, at some point you're going to get infected, and that's just the chaos number that they saw coming down. And we talked about it a bit more, like, let's set it on the south coast of Iceland. I know roughly the story. I know we're going to be getting from A to B. I didn't tell them we were going to get from A to B to C and D, because, like, what they thought the story over here a very, very small hand size up to like a massively long trek across the south coast of Ireland. I knew that, but they didn't. I was like, I just set it there. Okay, cool. So we have a zombie apocalypse outbreak in Iceland. I know who my players are going to be. I know roughly the system we're going to use. And then I got sick.
Oh no! Oh, I remember now. Yeah. I remember you saying, "Oh my goodness."
I was sick. I basically ended up with about 4 weeks of prep time. Although I had been thinking about it constantly for about 4 or 5 months, and I've been writing down ideas like, here's an encounter, there's an encounter, here's a story we could do. Oh, they sent me their backstory. Oh, I know what I can do with the people in their backstories. Like, I can write all this down. This is great. So by the time I had 4 weeks to write everything down, Bob was your uncle. And then I was like, okay, I know I want to try and prep this differently. I know I want to run this differently. I normally write very big, epic, sprawling campaigns. I can't do that because I only have 8 days of recording. I've never done that before. I've never had to do an entire story in like a very small amount of time. Okay, how am I going to do that? Monster of the week. Everything is to be treated like Monster of the Week. You know those random encounter tables that I personally don't like? That's it. I have specific places. We have Vig, we have Selfoss, we have like these particular things. This one tourist trap is going to be genuinely murderously hell. This is going to be incredible. And every morning I got up, I picked a new encounter and I got them to it. I then got them to the place which has a specific story reason for it because family there, because like the specific layout of that particular town. I did a lot of Google Mapsing the morning of prep just to make sure I remember what the place looks like. So I could talk them through it, like Selfoss is here, and then there's like this big bridge and stuff.
B-roll footage of the actual places.
Yes, so we're going to be going to do that very soon. We've already like recorded the whole thing, but like we now know that we can go out in the good Icelandic sun when it comes out eventually, and like do that whole trip. Like it's less than a day in a car. It's about an 8-hour drive from one to the other. But on foot, this is like 12 days of walking. It's an intense thing to do. So like, there was a lot of prep. I've never prepped like that before. I actually really enjoyed it because it took a lot of pressure off of trying to fill the time, trying to let go. But a different pressure was we knew the time limits and we were recording right up to 3 hours before we had to get on the ferry. And that was the finale. So I timed it out poorly, but we got there. We recorded everything and that was very, very different. So like we have 2 Icelanders at the table who were occasionally dropping Icelandic phrases, the bastards. I did my best pronouncing place names, but I am not natively Icelandic and I'm really bad at it. So there was a place name that we got mixed up because I didn't know how it was pronounced properly. My Icelandic player to my right-hand side as we were playing, lovely man, Dago is an incredible human being. And I was like, I brought out the world's crappiest map and like, please tell me how to pronounce this. What's this word? I learned Icelandic phrases so I could yell at them in Icelandic when they were being naughty. It was great. But of course, a lot of it was, the whole thing was essentially in English by like a few phrases because Neil is also not natively Icelandic. He is American, and although we have the American-English debates, we only speak English. I know just enough Icelandic to maybe get by, and I think I now know a phrase which basically means I can't leave you, and that's kind of the extent of it. But we muddle our way through. We have genuine Icelandic in it. I try my best with the place names, and we set it in alternative Iceland because I do fuck things up.
Classic zombie line there. I can't leave you. I mean, I love the fact that you've got that in there.
Ég get ekki yfirgeðir þig, which basically means almost like I can't or I won't leave you. And I had learnt this for a character who was mute.
Okay.
So they come across, various people in their travels and they pick up an NPC very early. And annoyingly, they keep hold of that poor woman for the entire game. And I get really annoyed because I keep trying to kill her, but she's mute. So she has to communicate with expressions, which when you were doing the, like a bit of this and a bit of that, where you're doing the things with your hands, I had to describe every action I did. So when you were doing that, I know exactly that pain, man. I've lived that for like 10 days.
That's fantastically funny. And I mean, I think it's one of the sort of things about refereeing these things is, first thing is prep is a spectrum. And it sounds like you didn't go the full every feat of real world map to fantasy. This thing is going to happen, which I think is good, and you go mad. Yes. That way lies madness. But then you don't want to go the way I run my D&D family and friends campaigns, where I literally do no prep at all, because why would you? Why do you need to? You just respond to what people say. And I think that knowing that there's this spectrum of prep is a really important thing. But you've got that added layer where I'm sure you're thinking about it, which is you're doing this for not for just for the players, but for the players to present to an audience.
Yes. So it was one of the things when we were chatting about putting the show together, and I was like, okay, well, let's make it, based in Iceland, and that's just going to be like something we do for this game. And a lot of it was like, okay, well, there's native Icelanders at the table, so I can't tell them you can't be Icelandic. That's just rude, right? And just not what I want to do. And I
it's
should
based in Iceland.
Exactly, because I love setting things in the real world because then I have an idea on where things are. Like, so there's a hilarious episode I've just quality controlled for the video where I can see myself doing this, putting my hands out in front of me, and I look over to the left. I'm like, and then the houses are. Wait, why am I looking over to the left? The houses are on the right. And I literally turn my body and start moving my arms to the right because I'm seeing them on the other side. Like, this is how my visual mind palace works. But that doesn't work so well in audio. We have to generally cut around those things. But in visual, bam, there it is. We can put it up. We wanted to include the Icelandic stuff because it was going to be set in Iceland. There were 2 Icelanders at the table. I live in Iceland. Why wouldn't we do that? But we had to do it in such a way that Icelandic felt like you could understand it in context. Like if someone, for example, that happens to the show, like, they learn that their aunt has like some sort of a chest infection and she had to be carried to where they find her. Like one of the players is like, are you fucking kidding me? In Icelandic, but I knew what he meant. I 100% knew what he meant, but it was in Icelandic. So like those kind of context things, and any point
but
where
that
I'm
feels
like
deeply authentic. It feels
Exactly.
connected to the world. It makes, and I think it's a bit like when they use Chinese in Firefly.
Yeah.
For swearing. There's something like, do you know what? That takes me into the world in ways that you couldn't have done if you didn't take that creative decision.
Yeah, and I think that's also something that, if I was going to have set this in Iceland as someone who still lived in the UK, I would never have learned how to put those things in. Because I wouldn't have thought, I need to put in the players are like, are you kidding me? My God, it's good to see you. What the hell are you thinking? What's occasionally in Icelandic? Claff.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought to put those in because I don't live here, but the Icelanders are Icelanders. They know what phrases are going to be quickly off the cuff for them. It's one of my points of pride of being able to make them swear in their own language.
But I think that having Neil in the room with you there doubles down on that because he can effectively represent the non-Icelandic speaker by providing that what the hell does that mean moment.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what does that mean? And there are a couple, there is one instance, like there's a very common phrase like góðan daginn, good day. And then there's blessaður sæti or something like that. And one of the players just popped it off the wrist at me. And I'm like, fit together. Sorry, I don't understand. You're going to have to do that in English. And he's like, I'm so sorry. Like any point where it became ununderstandable, like it was really easy to build in the fact that Neil and I don't understand what they're saying. Yeah. There's a few phrases. But if someone yells at you, hey, do, in a very angry way as you're doing something naughty, you're going to assume that probably means stop. So yeah, like we did a good job between Neil and I of making sure that if the Icelandic had to be understood, then it was in English. But my players are incredible. Yeah. They're both incredibly fluent English speakers. They've been role-playing for absolute years. And I was very blessed to have them at the table because anytime they realised that I had no idea what was going on, they switched to English. And they didn't do Icelandic that often, to be fair. It was often just those phrases of like, what are you doing? Are you kidding me? Paper, scissors, rock? I don't know what that is in Icelandic, but as soon as he said it, I knew what he meant.
But I think that's joyful. I mean, so when does this... Is this out? Well, at the time of this episode comes out, will the show be available?
So the first episode, which is technically the backstories episode, because it's a thing I like to do. It's something I did differently as well this time. Normally when we do backstory episodes, just me and the player, and we just go through an episode and their backstories. But because this is a zombie apocalypse and I want people to die, I had the other 2 players at the table playing people who knew they had to die. That was the one rule they had. Your character has to die in this other person's backstory. And it was glorious.
I love this. I've been doing this. I've been using the term preludes to describe it, but I've been doing this in my private games for about 2 decades. It's
so fun.
Love this process. Yeah.
So we had them do the backstory episodes, and that was set on June 17th, which is when the apocalypse technically starts. June 17th, 2026, which is also the Icelandic Day of Independence, because I thought it was funny. And I thought, I love the storytelling in the visual storytelling in Fallout 4, where you can see like it's Halloween, right? All the decorations up. And I love that idea. I love like the world telling a bit of a story. And I thought it would be great because one of the bigger things in Iceland is Independence Day. You see all the bunting, all the flags out, all the people like with the blue, white, and red faint paste on. And I love that. And I wanted to have that as a storytelling element. I thought this would be very cool. The day of Independence is the day that Iceland dies. Like, how cool is that? And then one of my players, because he didn't know what I was doing, he just looked at me in our Discord chat one day and just wrote, "Did you set the apocalypse on the 17th of June? Yes. The day of our independence? Yes. Did I go too far? Oh God, I'm so sorry." He's like, "Oh, I don't care. That's kind of fun. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't wrong." Woo! Oh boy, howdy.
Yeah. No, I think it's brilliant. I think it's a brilliant way of doing it.
It's kind of fun. But anyway, so we had them record those. There are 3 backstory episodes, all contained in one episode, and that comes out on July 10th, which is tomorrow for us recording, but I have no idea when this comes out. So that story is available already. It's up on our YouTube, on all of our podcatchers. And also the actual story starts, all 48 episodes of it, actually starts October 1st, every single day until the end of the story.
Excellent. Wow.
Again,
that's intense. Yeah.
Again, it's the great experiment because we've always told that being regular and being scheduled is key. Always release on the same days. Always spread out your content over X amount of time. Don't release more than X amount per day. But I don't have any evidence to say that that's true. And you know, we are doing edit light because we are ripping the audio from the visual and doing very minimal cuts comparatively. And which means if I want to cut, I have to tell my video editor to do the big cut before it goes to the audio guy, who will then change it. And maybe he'll do some final edits that are different to the audio versus to what they are on the YouTube.
Yeah.
So those are those things going on. So we just, you know, we're testing it out and seeing how it goes. The episodes are between an hour and an hour and a half.
I cannot wait to find out how this goes. It sounds phenomenal. So how long is a typical episode going to be then?
It's about an hour to an hour and a half. I think the longest is like an hour and 40, and that was like an intense random moment. We have everything from genuine side-splitting laughter, which comes out October 1st, which we thought was going to be our end date. That episode broke me in a way that I cannot describe, to genuine heartbreaking performances from my players, and they are just incredible. Like, all of them have just standout scenes in my mind. And even our, like, one of the players who has never really played for performance, he has done a couple of times but not a lot, he absolutely fucking nailed it. Like, he just had everything down. He was in the right place in the microphone at almost all times. Yes, he was loud, but he's a loud boy, but he was like a perfect performer. He was an incredible note taker and genuinely just a good being. I realised I've never said the name of the project.
No, let's tell us the name. So
the podcast is called Varus RPG, and if you're writing it with an English keyboard, it's Varud. Varud. It's Varus because it's set in Iceland, and we've decided all of our shows are going to be set in Iceland now if we do this again, which who knows. But it's Varud RPG. And the story we're doing is called Dead Island if you're writing it in English, or Dead Island if you're writing it with an Icelandic keyboard. The joke being that Island in Icelandic means Iceland. Just, it was funny to us. The idea of calling it Varuth was actually from Neil, because he listens to a lot of Sigur Rós, who is an Icelandic band, and they make kind of like very out there music. And it was like one of the few Icelandic words that he knew, and the word means warning. Varuth means warning, which makes sense, like warning, Dead Island, if you're looking at it in English, or Varuth, Dead Island. Caution, Dead Iceland. And the pun was funny to me. So that's what the story is called, but our podcast is called Varud RPG.
Lovely. And hopefully you're going to give us a nice little trailer or snippet we can share.
I absolutely have those prepared, because I had to prepare everything, because I'm going to be sick in September, just as we're prepping everything. So...
Of course you are, because you're far too organised in the best possible way, as always. Yes. Love it. So we will make sure that we post this up, and we'll put in a connection out, a trailer, all that kind of stuff. I can't wait to see what this looks like. It sounds phenomenal. I genuinely can't wait to get stuck in when it comes out in October.
It's so fun. Like, the zombie thing is something I've wanted to do for a while. Our infection mechanic scared the shit out of my players, because we were using pegs on the top of my GM screen to represent like a dex order, which is how BRP and a lot of Chaosium games work. And I had an infection number, which was 109876. I had that written on pegs. And then every time that we got the number low, I just put a new peg up. So it just literally saw the numbers going down, and they were getting scared every time I started playing with with pegs on the other end. It was amazing.
But this reminds me of the way, when I first had a game of Cthulhu and the sanity check started to happen. But this sounds simpler, cleaner, much more effective. I really, as a designer, I love the mechanical possibilities it comes across.
Oh yeah,
as.
BRP, which is like the basis of, like, for example, Call of Cthulhu and a bunch of other stuff. I'm sure you know. It's really clean in how things are operated and how things are done. But BRP as a basic system is very much like, this is like the start process for all the systems that come after it. Fortunately, you have to be a little bit good at maths and be willing to look up a lot of things at the table if you're using BRP straight, because it does things like, here is your core statistic. It's a number between 1 to 20, let's say. And then you have checks, which are times by 5, times by 4, times by 1. You have to roll onto that on 100. And that's difficult to do in the moment. And if you're not comfortable with maths, that becomes even more difficult. So we actually just stole a lot of stuff straight out of the Call of Cthulhu system, which is like, it's already multiplied out, and then it's just easy, hard, or difficult. It's an extreme success or critical.
I'm not a huge fan mathematically of Call of Cthulhu as a process. Not because I have a problem with the mechanics. It's just the way you start out. You are so cripplingly bad at everything. And unless you really specialize, in which case you can become ridiculously good and remove any.
You become ridiculously good at like 1 or 2 things if you're basing it, like, depending on how like your background is structured, and then shit at literally everything else.
Literally, no, I mean subhumanly incapable. As in, no human being couldn't do this thing, and yet.
It's always like, to me, the laughter is always like science is usually 1 as a base. Everyone knows a little bit of science. Like, you can't ask, out of your only 320 points that you can spread only across your hobby skills or your professional skills, you're going to know a little bit of science. Like, what are you doing here? Please don't do this to me. Please don't make me do
falls on
this.
Head. That's a thing called gravity. Surely I should know that. Or touch hot thing hurts.
Yes.
Surely you should be able to work that out. On a science roll of 1, you have no chance.
We had an interesting conversation at the table, and we cut it from the episode because, like, this is kind of boring, right? But it was just a mechanics thing we were talking about. So the drive basic is 20. And that's enough to, like, assume to, like, you can drive a car from A to B or whatever. And it's only generally supposed to be applied to cars. But one of my players asked if he could decide his character didn't drive. So he only got a 1% in drive. So he could get an extra 19 points to spread where he wants. And we were sitting at the table and we were talking about it. And I was like praising him for being bold enough to have 0, basically 1 in drive. And the other Icelander was like, I don't know a single adult Icelander who doesn't have a driving license. And between them, they had like a genuine 3 or 4 minute discussion and think about the fact everyone in Iceland as an adult can drive. So this should just be given as a basic stat, right? This should not be a nothing skill, because if you live in a remote area, you have to drive. There's no other choice. Like, I can drive. I don't choose to drive often, but I have a partner who does. But if, worse comes to worse, I can still drive. And that's the same for a lot of Icelanders because of the location that we're in. It's madness to think you're an adult in Iceland with that. So everyone should just have those 20 points back for free, shouldn't they?
If you're enjoying this interview, why not check out this brief trailer from our guest?
You see, looking up from the ground, blood-red clouds boiling across the sky.
You did ask me to bring the thunder.
Agent! Help! I've got the chalice, please!
Well, if they're following you, then I guess that takes care of a loose end for me.
All of you feel the earth beneath you shake and crack and break.
I feel that I have failed both of you, and I am sorry for that.
This has nothing to do with you being a bad leader.
Do you want a countdown? Oh, I think I want a countdown.
I wanted
3,
to help. I always had good
2,
intention. I did not deserve to die.
Now.
The Lucky Die podcast is a weekly 5e Dungeons & Dragons actual play podcast. Join our adventure every Monday wherever you download podcasts by searching for The Lucky Die.
Yeah, I like the argument. I'm not sure I'd buy it. But isn't that, that's the joy of being able to make your own system for this particular thing.
And
even if you are leveraging existing one, you're applying it. And isn't that what we do with all of the games that we do? We always, whoever, I mean, can't be that many people who ever play a game completely flat.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever played in any games where it is always rules as written. Or, mostly it is the spirit. And sometimes, we'll have 5-minute discussions on like whether a certain spell can or can't be used in a certain way when we talk about D&D 5e. Then we argue the toss between 5 and 5.5e. Like, I don't think I've genuinely, truly ever played a game where someone was so hardcore on the rules that we could never deviate from them. And I'm not sure I'd want to either. I don't enjoy rules lawyers. Understand that they're helpful to have at the table when you're making a decision and you don't know all the rules because as a GM you shouldn't have to. It's fine. But I'm not sure I could ever play it in that kind of a game because I think I'd lose my gourd really quickly with people.
I always go by the two main rules is I'm the DM. And the other one, which is rule of cool. They're the two premises. Yeah, like, is this cool in this moment? Can we break narrative? And I always preface like a lot of the decisions that I make with, in this particular situation, we will allow it. But that does not mean I'm setting a precedent. This is the exception to the rule, especially from I'm unsure about it. Third one, which is you can do anything you like, but there will be consequences.
We had because of the system, there are the fumbles and then there's like pure fumble.
Yeah.
I always did like, hey, there's a fumble and then there's a major wound with potentially like permanent injuries, and we did have those. It was scary as hell. But I always had I put it up to the council to decide what the fumble is. I put it up to the council to decide what the injury is. And we had some good stuff coming out of like the council of fumble. Although, how do you fumble a look check or a listen check? You can't fumble those and make those a thing, but you can fumble basically everything else.
I don't know.
So we had those.
I could come up with some fumbles, like you're paying attention to the seagull over there and walk into a lamppost instead. Stuff like, it doesn't have to be literal. I mean, I like the idea that you now have an earworm where you can't stop singing, the Rickroll.
Yeah. Well, my favorite one when I think about like earworms in inappropriate times is Staying Alive by the Bee Gees for CPR.
Yeah.
Because we had genuine like medical, I mean, they're being eaten by zombies. Of course, they have medical issues. But just in those moments, CPR had to be done. I have to keep that little tidbit to the back of my brain because if I say it's going to be like ruin the moment. Always weird little things like that you can fuck around with.
You say ruin, I say entertaining. Anyway, on that note, thank you so much. I mean, literally, I really can't wait to hear, to hear and view what you've done. It sounds like an incredible project. The whole idea of zombies being done in a way which is deeply personal in a new context with this sense of impending dread sounds phenomenal, and I can't wait to see it. So please check that out. If people want to find out more about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can check out Blighthouse.studio. That is the website where basically all of our projects are housed and linked to. For this particular project, you can search varudrpg.com, VARUDRPG.com, and that is specifically for like the website for the zombie game. And you can also find us by searching in all the podcasts. Those are probably the best ways, or you can just email me, contact@blighthouse.studio. I answer basically every email roughly within a week.
At some point, you will get an answer.
Yes.
And I can attest to that. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that, guys. I mean, I think hopefully what we've covered here is a huge way. The transition between doing a show for a long period of time to then starting to step up and taking on professional responsibility for where you can take that group of people to the next level, and to be able to think about that in terms of new projects, new content, but then to actually start focusing on new art and interpretation of experiences, and to create something which sounds magnificent. And I genuinely hope you guys all check it out. I will make sure that's all in the show notes so you'll be able to find it, and we'll have a link to or incorporate a trailer and snippets as far as we can get out of them. On that note, thank you very much. We'll be back in soon where we talk to more people about the joys of making actual plays and audio dramas.
Bye.